Holly Cotton here, and you guys know I love when I get to highlight a woman. I love my men. Thank you guys. Thank you. You've had a couple of episodes, but when I get to highlight a woman that is doing big things, being the change, inspiring other people, I cannot wait for her to be on my show and share her story. So today I have Miss Nina Sossamon-Pogue, who started as a USA gymnastics team. So you actually were a gymnast?
I was a gymnast. I was on the U.S. gymnastics team. Yeah.
Okay, I was just making sure. I was like, wait,
Yep.
because it didn't. Okay, all right. So she's USA, and I love this, Nina, because everyone is talking about Olympics right now.
Oh, it's so fun.
So
Such
that's
a fun
so
time.
okay. Let me go back. I know. Okay, let me not mess it up this time. Okay, USA gymnastic team gymnast, and she also spent 20 years in television news and went over into the entrepreneurial world, and now she is an author and a speaker, and she is giving back. So welcome, Nina.
Thanks so much for having me, Holly. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So before we go into all of the stuff that you're doing now, because she has tons of talking topics, we're going to pull out a whole bunch of stuff, get you guys motivated. I love it. I love it. But let's go first, because that is a big difference between being an elite gymnast to motivational speaker. So tell us the backstory of how Nina became Nina now.
Yeah, and it's fun to talk about the gymnastics part now, which was decades ago. But everybody's talking about it right now with the Olympics underway as we record. So I was on the U.S. team back in the 80s, back in the Mary Lou Retton days. And then I was traveled all over the world, Japan, Hungary, Germany, Australia, representing USA. And then I didn't make the Olympic team. One of my first big failures in life, thought I was a failure at the ripe old age of 17. My life was over. And then I went to college and I was a gymnast for LSU, also great gymnastics program. And then I blew out my knee and thought my life was over. I didn't know who I was without gymnastics. But then I found television. I loved being a journalist and became a journalist and then a news anchor, had big success there, won best newscaster in the Southeast, like really huge success. And then I was involved in a really horrific accident. Also during that time, I went through, in my 30s in there, I went through a divorce. I got let go one time from a TV station. They went younger and blonder. And then I also was involved in an accident that took me from being in, reporting the headlines to being in the headlines. And I just went through a really tough time. But then I got out and I got into tech and joined a friend's startup. And then I had huge success in tech. So really what I'm all about is the failures. I talk more about my failures than my successes, because the gymnastics piece was just the beginning of many, many years of overcoming and becoming resilient. And so my full-time gig now is sharing with people, how do you do that? What is the differentiator? Why do some people get stuck when they fail or have a big, something they planned on in life didn't go as they planned? And how come some people just go on and thrive and have huge success afterwards? And so I've spent a lot of time looking into that. That's what I share now.
First of all, I went to LSU too, Nina.
Get out! Oh my gosh, I did not know that.
I'm from Louisiana originally, and I went to LSU on scholarship. I know.
No
I was like, in my head. Sorry, guys.
Sorry, we're fangirling here. I love it that you went to LSU. I go back twice a year. I go back for a football game every year with all the gymnasts who were my freshman gymnasts that came in with me in 1985. So that's how long ago it was. We were all freshmen together. We go back for one game every year and try to go back for one gymnastics meet too. And so those girls are still my core. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, actually, I went to a football game this year. Oh gosh, I don't even remember. It was the weekend of Thanksgiving, and I keep telling these young kids at LSU, I'm like, listen, this is not how it used to be. You guys are living the lap of luxury. Like, they were selling tickets in the quad for like $2 because no one would go to the games when I went in. When I was there, I was like, you didn't have that whole extra part that's up there now. Like, oh my gosh, they don't realize how great they have it.
Yes, yeah, they do, and the dorm situation is so much better than it was when I was there. And in the gymnastic, in the athletic program, they have their own study spaces now, and they have their own mental health coaches and things. None of that was there in the '80s. Let me tell you.
No,
I
you
like to
just
say that we built that program. You and I,
definitely. That's what I was.
we definitely,
Yes.
yeah.
You had to live in those terrible apartments right there in the ghetto off
Oh,
campus, or
so
you
bad.
had.
I lived in those. Yep.
Okay, me
Did.
too. I was too. And then I moved up to Tigerland, and I thought I was rich.
I never moved up to Tigerland. I lived in the crappy apartments. But then I did work at WBRZ. That was my first TV job.
Okay, that is so cool. Okay, sorry, we're not gonna go. I know. So whenever you meet someone and you
Yeah.
that bond is there. Okay, all
Go
right.
Tigers.
So what I do want to ask you, Nina, I was thinking about this, and I think that this is an interesting topic. Not to keep talking about the gymnast part, because that was just one of the great things that you've done, but because it's Olympic season and we're seeing all of these emotions that the gymnasts are having, because there's so many parts of, like, I didn't even know there were the competition, there's like a million things that are are events, and I'm thinking, wow, I didn't even know how so what I wanted to do is just ask you really quick, as someone that has sort of walked that road, what are some of the emotions that goes through your mind whenever you're on stage, whenever you're performing? Like, what is that thought process? How challenging is that?
Well, obviously challenging for all of the athletes. And with gymnastics, there's 4 events, and you do first the qualifyings to see if you make it into individual and see if you make it into the team events and make it into the all around. And then you do the day of team competition, which is totally separate, starts from zero again. And then you do each of the events. So getting yourself up for it every time is a big part of it, keeping your head in the game with all the other excitement that's going on. And then the self-talk, because you see all these other athletes at the top of their game. I know for me, when I competed internationally, I thought I made the team, so I knew who my competition was in the U.S. and I felt I knew where I fit in. I wasn't number one, like Mary Lou Retton was number one. We roomed together a few times, but that's because my maiden name was Rofi. It wasn't because we were 1 and 2. The first year
Mm.
she won. The first year she won the USA's, I won Miss Congeniality. So
Hey,
a
we'll
little
take
different.
it.
Yeah. So getting your head in the game and keeping it in the game. And I do see, I think they've had a lot of good mental health coaching. And I think a lot of it is this self-talk, and I think you can see it, people doing their mantras under their breath and saying it when they step up and steadying themselves, putting their hand on their chest or their hand on their belly and breathing and getting in the moment and saying their mantra to really stay in the space. And it's much more common now than it was back then. But that was a big part for me. I was probably in the early phases of that, is um, getting in your own head and giving yourself your own pep talk. And we can do that in any form, any walk of life. I do it now before I step out on a stage to speak. I'll put my hand on my belly, I'll take a deep breath, and I'll say my mantra in my head. And for mine is always, it's about the audience. It's not about you. I need that reminder every time to get out of my own head about all the specific things I want to say and how I want to say it. Right before I step out, I always go, it's about them. It's not about you. And I just want to share and pour in. So, but
Hmm.
we all do that. Whether you have to go, I'm a rock star at sales, or like, I got this thing. Like, we all have that moment. So I think the mental health game um, in gymnastics or for a lot of these athletes is a lot of this self-talk and the reminder that we all need in ourselves that you've done the work to get here. Now just go show the world what you've got. And we can do that any day in our lives. You can wake up in the morning and go, today I'm going to show the world how friggin' great I am. You know, we can do that anytime.
Right. And sometimes your mantra is just, you can survive this. You can do this. You can sometimes it's just I can make it through another day at work, or I can make it through this appointment, or I can make it through this treatment, or whatever. Like, there's so many opportunities where sometimes it's just I can barely make it. And the reason why I was asking you that, Nina, is because, oh my gosh, I'm sweating so my necklace keeps dropping. like,
It is.
and I have this new oily lotion, so it's like slick, just sliding down
But
my
you
neck.
look fabulous. Yeah.
That's the point. Sometimes you just got to suck it up for the for the camera. But I was asking your opinion about it because you obviously are older now. You've gone through that process. And so whenever you're in the moment, when you're young and you're, like you said, 17, 18 years old, it's so hard to break from that thought. And I had a guest, well, her mom was on my show, and her daughter died via suicide because she was a cheerleader at a college, and she didn't make this, she hurt her leg and she didn't make the team, and her mom was trying to get her therapy and, you know, go through that. She was very depressed. She didn't know what her life was, not to be a cheerleader. So that's why I wanted to ask about that. And when going through that, like you said, you didn't make the team, and that was a failure that you had. So if you could go back to that 20-year-old person, 17, 18, 19, 20, whatever, child, if you could go back to her, what advice would you give her now as Nina, the motivational speaker? How can we get through this? Don't worry. Like, what would be some concrete advice that you would give to that Nina that had just failed?
Oh, that's the best question anyone's asked me in a long time. Thank you for setting me up like that, because that is my first book. I would now I'd hand her the book I wrote, because I wrote it sort of as a love letter to that young Nina. And I wouldn't say a child. I think when you're not a child at 17, 18, like, you've got your own adult feeling problems, and how you feel is very validated. So for anybody who's in that space, whatever age you are, um, there's so much life ahead of you. You just have no idea. And people can tell you that all day long, but it doesn't feel real. So I have this chapter 6 in my book. My daughter, when she was in college, I have 3 adult kids now. So my daughter, when she was in college, she would tell me, I'd say, how are you doing? She'd say, I'm doing okay. But my friends are all a mess. They just want to, they failed a test. They want to quit school. Their boyfriend dumped them. They think their life is over. She goes, I do chapter 6 on them all the time. So this chapter 6 thinking, and I really wrote my first book. It's called This Is Not the End: Strategies to Get You Through the Worst Chapters of Your Life. But the thinking behind it is for this young person who, it's the don't jump off the bridge book. It is that. It is the, hey, you're going through a tough time. Let me just, with my multiple years of wisdom and research now, share with you just a handful of things that I promise will get you through. I promise. Just pick it up. But one of the most important ones is this chapter 6 thinking, and it's this timeline math. So for me, let's use me as an example, since you just told my story, Holly. So when I was 19 and lost my sport, I blew out my knee, thought my life was over at LSU. All the other athletes walk into practice, and I'm sitting there like leaning up against the PMAC. I had to work in the laundry room. So one, I'm super depressed. I'd like take my 2 Percocets with a shot of Jaeger in the morning, crutch myself over to the laundry room and PT and stuff. And I ran laundry, and not cute little leotards. I'm washing like jock straps and all the athletic laundry back then. My claim to fame almost became, I washed Shaquille O'Neal's jock strap. That was almost my claim to fame.
Whatever it takes.
Anyway, so I would have these like really down times. I just thought my life was over at the ripe old age of 19, because if you think about it, what I knew in life at that moment, from age 4, since I've been as I started gymnastics until then, 75% of my life experience was gymnastics. 75% of what I knew about life was in the gym. It did feel like my whole life was over. Very validated to think that. Like and you hear this from young athletes now. Like, I feel like my life is over. Like, I wasted my life. I'd never been to a high school party. I'd never been to a football game. My life felt like it was over. Now I can see that 75%. And now I can play it forward and look at my life after that and go, okay, if I take a piece of paper and I draw a horizontal line, and 0, and then 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, my timeline. Draw my timeline at 100. If I live to be 100 and I need to drink less wine and take better care of myself. But if I get there, then there's that point on that. Yeah, fingers crossed. And I can say, okay, that dot at 19, wherever you are right now, do this. Put that dot on your timeline. For me, that dot was 19. That was 75% of what I knew in life. But I can look back now with my perspective, many, many years later. I'm 57, but I can look at my life and go, okay, when I was 50, I put a dot there. I can see that now that gymnastics chunk of life is now 28% of my whole life. And that time when I parented kids, much bigger section of my life. All my years on television, bigger section of my life than TV. So I can see the difference in my years in tech. That 12 years is a chunk in there. So I can see that's 28% of my life. Now, if I live to be 100, then it's 15%. Those years, I can look at it very differently. And what I like about this timeline thinking is you can put everything that you've done up till now on that timeline. Throw it all in there, where you've lived, people you've loved. I put the men that I loved on there once. I put everything in my timeline, and jobs that I've had, and put everything on your timeline leading up that made you who you are. And the magic of this is all the rest of the timeline ahead of you is blank. And I do this even now when I have a tough day at 57. I can still see the blank space ahead and go, okay, what do I want to put over there? Like, all the blank space ahead is magical. Some people do it with a book analogy and say all the pages ahead are blank. So I say this because if you're in a tough spot and it feels like everything, that is valid. Probably when you're in it, it does. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. You're in a bad chapter of your life. It's not your whole life. And similar to the woman you had on your podcast, I have a podcast as well. The woman I had on mine who had lost a child, also in the same way. We talked about that a bunch, and she talked about how she got herself through it. Her story was more around her than the suicide itself. But you have to create the person you're going to be on the other side of a tough loss. So whatever's happening, you're not going to be the same. You're going to be different on the other side, but you get to choose. You get to choose what that looks like. Especially when you're really low, there's a thing that's kind of magical because no one expects you to be the same. Like, you can totally go off the rails and do something totally different because you're in a tough spot, redefine who you are, make yourself a new person. It's all, it's your life. You get one. So that's my thinking, the timeline thinking. I have a 4-part framework, but the timeline is my favorite thing to talk about.
I love that. Okay, one, I'm stealing it, but I love that. Not stealing it. I'm just gonna use it as a reference point and be like, yeah. So I had Nina Sossamon-Pogue on my show, and she said this and that and timeline, and today is not the end of the world. Oh, I got it now. Up here, Nina. I got it.
Okay. Well, I'm going to send you a copy of my book and write a little note in it. You can have it. You can run with it. Please share it widely.
I
love
that.
The thought.
So my next question, before I go into about specific stuff about your brand and some of the questions that I wanted to ask you, let me just ask this because I'm always curious whenever there is that transition, because someone said something one time and they said it's either the push of pain or the pull of possibilities is what happens to make you find your purpose in life. So obviously for you said it was more of the push of pain because it was the failures and it was the going through divorce and all of these things. So you're kind of like, I got to figure out my life. I got to do something else because this ain't it, right? So that pushed you to the possibilities of where you are today. So I want to know how the official transition happened. So you wrote your first book, and then how did you go into where now I want to start speaking about this? Now I want to have an audience. Give us the backstory of that, because I love to hear when people transition from one point in their life and do something totally different.
Yeah, so that was probably the first time in my life, now that you mentioned it that way, that I was in a pull space and not a push space. So I've had big moments in my life that pushed me to rethink and reset. And I talk about resilience and how you reset and the commonalities that people who reset well do. But that was a pull moment in my life. I was 50, and I was in tech, and I had a very, successful, lucrative job in tech. We had taken a company public. I'd gone from debt to wealth. I was thinking about the ways in which I wanted to make a difference in the world. You get to that point. My kids had left for college. I had some money in the bank and things paid for, and I thought, what do I want to do now that I can do whatever I want? What does that look like? And I said, I want to give back in a more meaningful way. I want to, but what is that? And I literally, this was an interesting way to go about it. A lot of people do this in their 50s. And it was suggested to me. I went and looked at my calendar over the last 3 months of my life at this moment. And I thought, what did I really enjoy doing? Where did I feel like I was adding the most value during those 3 months? I looked at, and I worked in corporate at the time. So I had a calendar that was full of stuff. You could see my day scheduled. And sometimes, other people had access to my calendar, and people would schedule a sync on my calendar. And at that moment, I probably had 250 or so people that reported up through me, to me. And we had an upside down org chart, so they actually reported down to me. But that were, I was responsible for. And I had syncs scheduled on my calendar. And I thought, okay, there are these moments when I had to write down like a plus or a minus next to everything in my calendar. It took me a while to do, 3 months. And I had these big green stars next to all the times when someone had scheduled a sync on my calendar that was not even part of my team. Like they had scheduled time to chat with me because they heard I was good at helping people get through stuff. And so, and I remember being in these little rooms, like stepping into the little glass, corporate space and having this person across from me and always with their back to the glass and them kind of breaking down and sharing with me like this had happened. I'm young guy coming across the bridges here in Charleston, like having panic attacks on his way to work, and his wife was pregnant and just afraid he couldn't do it. And a woman who had lost her husband who just didn't want to go on. And I thought, first, I'm not HR. Like this should not be my space in this. Wait. But I had become this person that people knew they could go to for help. And that I was offering things and helping in ways that were obviously working. And I saw that on that calendar and went, I really love those moments. That's where I'm adding the most value. I'm truly helping and saving people. And I had a time when a neighbor had knocked on my door, and I opened the door, and he's standing there with 2 beers in his hand, tears running down his face. And he said, I just lost my job and I can't go home. I don't know what to do. And I said, I got you. And so he came in, we walked through the house, we sat on the end of my dock, and I was like, have you thought about this? Do this. I knew I was helping. This is that concept, Holly. I knew I was helping, but I was only helping one person one at a time, and I wasn't sure exactly what it was I was sharing. So I stepped away from my corporate job after looking at all that and realizing that's what I'm really good at and I really enjoy. And I did the research, and I said, this is what I'm saying, and here's how it ties into Stoicism, how it ties into neuroscience, and all the books and things I've read to get myself through things through the years, and all the research I've done to help myself and others through things. And it combined into this body of work with my own life experience that truly speaks to people in a way that was working. And more than getting to one person at a time, I knew I could put this book together. And as the book was coming together, my dad had passed away too. And there was this concept of, I don't want to leave it unsaid. I want to be able to be there for my children. What if I'm not here? And he had Alzheimer's, and I was so afraid of losing my mind. I wanted to get it all out on paper before that happens, which it still could. So I was constantly writing and putting it all together. And then I thought, I really have something here that's truly helping. And I wrote this first book. And it's my own mashup of, like I said, cognitive behavior therapy, which they do with trauma patients, and even young men going off to war. And then Stoicism and neuroscience and some big data and some, concepts around corporate change and people who work in the corporate space will know those are different ways in which we change management. It's some change management in there too. So it's my own mashup of all of that. And so the book came about from that. And the first time I put the book out into the world, I was flying home on a plane and had extra copy in the back of my bag. And that, I'm kind of rambling on, but I feel like this would be a fun story to tell you because you get it because you're a young woman. You can edit it out if you want. But
no,
I
go ahead. I love stories. Go ahead.
Well, it's kind of fun. So I wrote the book because I really wanted it there for my children and for other people, and I wanted to put my thoughts out in a comprehensive way that was also really short. Hard to write a short book. So in a way that was just for the reader. It's for you. When you pick it up, it's written to you. It's all about you. It's not about me, that book. It's not somebody else's problems. I had been through something where I stood in the hall, back when you stood in Barnes and Noble in the aisle and was like looking for help. And there were big books on PTSD. There were other books on other people's stories. And I just wanted somebody to tell me what to do. Like, I didn't want somebody else's story. I was in so much pain myself. And so that's what the book was. Anyway, so
now
I
you got to tell us the story. You got to tell. So you had an extra copy in your suitcase. I was like, wait, no, what's happened? What happened with the suitcase?
Okay, I felt like I was going.
No, I want to hear. So you had okay. Start again. You had a book, an extra book in your bag.
Okay. I had an extra book in my bag, got on a plane after doing my first big book launch, and I'm all excited, and I make my connection in Charlotte, and I am flying, and I go to get on, and I get upgraded to first class. And so I sit down, and this fine man sitting next to me, he was so good looking, and he was dressed to the nines. Like, his shoes probably cost more than my car. Like, you could tell he was used to first class. That was where he belonged, and he was all manscaped and manicured and beautiful and suit the whole
my
thing.
weakness.
So
I
sit down, I say nothing. Oh, he was pretty. Oh, he was just that. Whatever you can imagine, it was that. So I'm sitting down. I say nothing because I'm super intimidated. And so I go about my business. I put my headphones on. I do my own thing. And we land. Still have not spoken to each other. And then I go to get up. And then there's a delay, once we're trying to get off the plane. And he says something and I say something. We start talking. And he said, do you have to I think he said, do you have to make a connection? So he was going to let me out. He was a nice guy. And so I was like, no, I got plenty of time. You go ahead. And he said, what were you traveling for? And I told him I just wrote a book and it was about this. And he said, he asked, what was it about? And I told him it's sort of the Don't Jump Off the Bridge book. It's really about people who are struggling. It's helping them get through a tough time. And he said, I'd love to hear more about it. And I said, well, I got a copy right here. And so I take one out of my bag and I hand it to him. And it's, traveling, my business card's tucked in it, and I hand it to him. And I don't think anything more of it. And I go make my connection and whatever. That was the end of it. 2 days later, I get a text because remember my business card was tucked in there and it had my phone number on it. I get a text and it says, you probably don't remember me, but you sat next to me on the plane. I read your book yesterday, and today, for the first time in 18 months, I woke up and didn't want to kill myself. And I just went, wow. Like, I have no idea who he was, but he certainly looked like we all do. We look like we have our shit together. And I just was like, wow. And he said, I was going through a divorce. His company was going under. He shared some other things with me. And I just, wished him well. And that was sort of the end of it. But wow. And I thought, if I do nothing else, done. I did a thing.
Right.
But it's that kind of it. So that
actually gave me a little chill when you said it, though. Like, I was like, it gave me chills. Yeah. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? And you just never know. You never know what people are going through. Like, here I was intimidated by this guy thinking he had his whole world. Like, he definitely has it all together. And he was in a horrible place, and every day was just getting up, trying to make it through another day. So there's so many of us walking around with our own stuff, just trying to get, like you said, trying to get through another day. So the book is written for that.
Well, I used to have that poster with when I had an office one time, sometimes the previous owner of the office would have decor that stays there. And they had just the cliche poster that said, be kind, you never know what someone is going through. So I left it there, and I was kind of like, then when I would be like, and I was like, Holly, look at the poster, be kind, be kind.
The universe placed it there for a reason.
It tried. So I was trying to look, I wanted to make sure that we could at least talk about something else that was on all the whole Nina brand. But so you because you got so many good things, and I know we're like dwindling down on time.
Thank you.
But I wanted to ask you, because I thought this one was kind of cool. It said, the question, you're specific when you talk about high achievers and the problem with the constant struggle to succeed and the success cycle. And I will tell you, because I am super type A, and I know that I am constantly, because I'm one of those people too that I have to be doing something. I always, when people ask me, "Oh my gosh, how are you doing 82 things?" and being a philanthropist, I'm always involved in community stuff. I'm everywhere. So I have my brand. I'm a nurse by trade. I have this, I have that. And then when I tell people how I function, I always say I feel like I'm walking in my purpose. So for me, everything is all aligning with the whole purpose of Holly Cotton, which is to be the change. So it doesn't seem like I'm doing 38 jobs. It just seems like I'm normal and I'm just doing a lot of stuff that sort of just keeps aligning with me. I say that I'm like the Holly Cotton meteorite. You know how whenever you see the meteor going and it's going, and then all of this stuff and it's got a huge tail at the end because it starts picking up all of this stuff in the universe. And that's what I feel like. I feel like I started like this and everything just keeps gravitating towards me. But with that, I am also hard on myself as well. So I'm interested to hear about the success cycle.
Okay, one, I love the meteorite thing. I'm stealing that from you. So even, that's a great, great analogy. And I just met you, but I totally can see that already. You are such a force. So yeah, the success cycle is really a cool concept, and I'll do it from the stage, and you can just see everybody in the audience, whether it's an audience of 50 or 3,000, they're all nodding like, "Oh my gosh, that's me!" Because if you've gone to a conference or something, you're by the definition of the success cycle, you're already in it by the time you step in that door. So it's anyone who sets a goal or has KPIs they have to hit, or maybe you're manifesting something. Maybe you have a vision board. You set something out there that you want. Okay, there's some people who don't do that, but anyone who does set something out there that you want and are not okay with the status quo, you're not okay with just going along. You want more. You want to do more, get smarter, be more. Like that's the high achievers. So the idea of this is, so you set the target, right? And whether it's a goal or your vision board or whatever it is, and then you start going around this circle. And you first learn some stuff. What do I got to do to make this happen? Like I did keto I wanted to lose weight one year, so I tried keto. I had to learn about it, or if you're trying to do a new company, you have to learn about what that space is. So you learn, and then you start getting to work at doing it, and some stuff works and some stuff doesn't. And you hash that out, and then you really dig down. This is going around the circle. You get to work, and then you go around and you're digging down and doing the work. You're working hard at it for a big chunk of the circle, and then it gets hard, or there's a blocker or a stumbling block or things you didn't realize were going to be there, and you have to be persistent. You have to kind of get through that. So they're coming up, you're persistent, really working at it. And towards the end, you have your commitment, your persistence, and you're getting there. You're almost back and about to achieve it. But then it gets super hard towards the end, because that's the nature of the beast. If you're trying to do something new or something that no one's done before, or you've set a target, and you have to have grit at the end because you really want this. That's who you are. You really want this. You're not giving up. And then you achieve, and you're all the way, like you're achieved. You did the thing. Yay, yay, you. And then you know what you do?
Mm-hmm.
You set a new target. And you go around again, dog. That's like bloop. So it's this constant, no matter, every time you achieve, you're like, I did it. I bought the house. I did the vacation. I lost the weight. I made the job. I got their promotion. But then you set a new target and you go around again, and you learn and you try and you do and you work hard and you're persistent and grit and you achieve and you work. And so it's this constant circle that we're in because we're high achievers. And to think that you're going to hit one and that's it and you're never going to jump in again is really unrealistic. So even if you see CEOs who've taken companies public, or people who've written a bestseller or whatever, then they go and do more on the other side of it. They do it again, or they become part of something else, or they try something else, because it's the way you're wired. You are a high achiever. You're into setting goals, working hard, and making those goals happen. And you're not okay with status quo. And once you can imagine something more out there, you want to work for it and get to it. So that's that high achiever success cycle. And um, it until you accept that you're in it and you're in the game, it can feel like this is never ending. When does it get easy? When does it get easy? Well, I hate to tell you, I'm 57 years old. It doesn't get easy. You continually will put new challenges in front of you and create your own stressors and wants and needs because you are that type of person. So that's what I mean by a high achiever. And it's and you meet a lot of people who are in this space who are waiting for things to get easy and think that the next time they as soon as you hit that thing, you're going to set a new target, Holly. I hate to tell you.
I already know.
You're going to continue to set it. Yeah. I wanted to raise great kids. Did it. Check that box. I wanted to sell off my house, pay for my house and get it paid off. Did it. Check that. I can check lots of boxes, but I will continue to put things out there.
Hey, I'd rather be in the success cycle than the failure cycle or the mediocre cycle. Put me in the success cycle and let me just be struggling to reach a goal rather than just being a mediocre person. Like
100%. 100%. Yes, girl, I'm right there with you. That is what it's all about.
That's the failure to me.
You want to be in
shooting for the stars and missing is like, that doesn't mean failure to me. That just means I need to figure out a different way. But staying in the same place, that's failure to me.
Yeah, well, and it's getting okay, and knowing that you're a high achiever, that this is the world you live in. So don't wait for it to get easy. Just enjoy that you're part of that crowd, man. You're in it. You're a part of you're in the game.
Thanks,
the analogy I use from the stage, you're like this.
But thank you for reiterating it.
You're in it.
I love it. Okay.
You are special in your own way.
Thank you. Okay, so my last question before we go into all this stuff is, you talk about helping people navigate the highs in life, which we just talked about with the success cycle as well, because obviously once you hit that goal, you're in the high. But how did you decide to focus on that? Like, when did you say, I'm going to focus on the failures and this is why? Or what was the thought process when you started saying, these are the things that I want to speak about and I want to reiterate these because I feel like it gives people more of this? Like, give us that organization thought process.
Yeah. So at first I thought I was just going to do, I got to the word resilience over time. So I didn't even know that was the word I was digging into when I started my research. And it's the definition that I use is your ability to adapt in a positive way to whatever happens in your life. So the adapt is the big piece. So persistence and grit are great, but sometimes you can't just double down and go hard. You have to adapt, like in 2020. Like I woke up January 1st, 2020, like everybody else, with my goals and my plans and going to lose weight, take a trip, do these things, work on my relationships, like we all did. And then the world changed. And the people who you couldn't just double down and go hard, you had to adapt in some way. That's the easiest definition, the easiest way I can show you that definition. You had to adapt. And those who adapted in a positive way, got to acceptance and went, okay, how am I going to move forward through this, are the ones who had the most success during that time period. So the adapt piece is what I really leaned into. And as I looked at that, obviously I really dug into my own struggle journey, as so many people do when they become authors or they start writing. And I dug into my 5 big failures and struggles in my life, which I shared earlier, and how I got through them and the journey to get back up, as I call, back up over the line, back into a better place in that timeline of ups and downs. But then I realized at the highs, there is also this now what moment. So obviously you're in a car accident, you get injured, like there's this now what moment. You get divorced, now what? You lose your job, now what? Those are those down now what moments. But there's also these highs that I found when I interviewed and talked with people that are the now what moments. Like right now, I just won the Olympics. So these young people are saying, the interviewer is saying, oh, it's the best day of your life. And I just so much want to insert into their vocabulary, yet. It's the best day of my life, yet. Do not leave them there with the rest of their lives ahead of them, knowing and thinking that it doesn't get better than this. It is the best day of your life yet. Or if you have a really crappy day, it is the crappiest day yet. You know, you might have a crappier one, but it's just part of the journey. And so I really started focusing on the highs and the lows and how much it takes for us to go from the lows to the highs and that journey. And then also when you're at the high, you know, no one lives up there forever. No one lives on the high forever. So how do you manage through life when you have some big highs, but you don't get to stay up there forever? What does the rest of the journey look like? And that's where this concept of timeline thinking and my framework for resilience came about. And I really love sharing it because I know that people are struggling, even the highs and the highs. That the guy next to me on the plane, I mean, he's definitely had some high highs because he was super successful just by his appearance, I was assuming. Um, but people have their struggles and their highs and their lows. The now what moments are really big, and we see it in executives who take companies public. We see it in people who have huge overnight successes, and then young actors, you know, that go off the rails later in life because they were, you know, they hit their highs at 15 or something. I just worry about people struggling through tough times. And what I realized I really wanted to do with my journey, my life, and my research was show people that the way forward, no matter what. There's a way forward no matter what. And my framework takes them through ways to think about life to move forward in their own way.
Oh my gosh. Let me tell you, I am absorbing and receiving all of the positivity. I love it. I love it. I love it. So I know it's just audience of one, but I'm still taking it in. I love that. I love that. So
Thank you, Holly.
yes, yes,
Thank you.
yes. So how can people find you? I know you said you have tons of things that you're doing, but so books, titles, how can people watch you or come to one of your events? Like, give us all of that information.
Well, you can follow me on social. I'm on all the socials. Mostly on Instagram and LinkedIn is where I spend a lot of my time. I do a lot of corporate speaking. So LinkedIn is a platform that I put myself onto for that space. And then Instagram and Facebook, obviously, I have some of my messaging there, and I think I'm hilarious, so I do some funny stuff too. Um, but it's inspirational and motivational, both. And motivation, I always say, I think you probably have shared this somewhere along. Motivation is like a shower. You need it a little bit every day, and inspiration sort of plants that seed for long-term success. So a little bit of motivation and inspiration in what I do. My first book is called This Is Not the End, Strategies to Get You Through the Worst Chapters of Your Life. You can get it anywhere you buy books, audio, ebook, softback, paperback. It's a quick read. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours. You can get that thing read and make it part of your thinking, and a piece of it, a nugget of it will help if you're in a tough situation. Really difficult to write a short book. I'm real proud of it. My second book, I think it kind of sucks, but it's out there. It's called But I Want Both, a working mom's guide to living a life she loves. And it's really about when your career takes off at the same time you start having children. I was mentoring a lot of young women at one point, and they were all in this space of rocks. I mean, just so smart and so good at what they did. And right at the point where they got the promotion or the big job was right when they started having children, and they were really torn to how do I do both things? So it's about who do you want to be? How do you create the person that's both of these things? Because I believe you can be both. So the reason I say it's not a great book is it's too long. I got really wordy. I wrote it during the pandemic and got all flowery and but it's going to have a rewrite. But that's my other book that's out there. And you can also find me. I have a bunch of YouTube stuff that's coming out. I don't do a lot on YouTube right now, but there'll be more coming. And so I hope to run into your folks anywhere. And DM me or reach out to me if you want to learn more.
Okay. And so your website, and spell it, because some people aren't watching, they'll just be listening. And, some people don't look in the podcast notes. So spell your social media handles and then your website.
Okay, so Instagram's the easiest place to find me and for daily stuff. And it's Nina, Nina _ SP period EAKS. So it's Nina Speaks. And we broke it up because we thought we were being clever. SP was Sossamon-Pogue, but it also sounds like speak. So There are other Nina speakers who are great. So it's Nina Speaks, but broken up with Nina_SP period EAKS for Instagram. And my name is Nina Sossamon-Pogue, and Sossamon-Pogue is SOSSAMONPOGUE. So my website is ninasossamonpogue.com. And I would love to hear from any of your readers, help in any way that I can. I hope that they will reach out and give me some feedback and tell me what nuggets of wisdom that I shared might work for
I
them.
love that. I love that. Okay, so I said your name wrong because I said Sossamon-Pogue. But in my defense, now that you know I'm from Louisiana, we put an accent on things that don't need one and eliminate some letters, and we just do our own dialect.
It totally. Yeah. Well, I married my first husband was Sossaman, and he went to LSU. He's a LSU baseball player. So I think you can stick with Sossaman for that. By the time I got into television, I threw the other syllable in because I, felt like it needed to be that to be
Okay,
professional.
got it, got it.
You can say it any way you want, Holly.
Listen, my name you
Okay.
cannot get any easier
Okay.
than Holly Cotton. Like that's people ask me all the time, did I make this name up? Is like what?
I was wondering. If you made it up because it's really damn good.
I was like, let me tell you, I would have picked a Rebecca. I don't know something. I don't know. Not country Holly
That's a
Cotton.
great name.
So anyway,
No, it's great. It's a great name. And now that I know you're a Louisiana girl, I'm all in. I'm going to listen to all of your stuff now.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, again, thank you so much for sharing your story. Like I said, I mean, I definitely absorbed a lot of information and a lot of the vibes and the energy, which I think is really important because you want people to be able to absorb. And that's how I am. Every encounter I have, what did I leave with that person? So thank you so much for leaving us with all of that great advice. You definitely gave us our daily dose of motivation today. So, and all of your information will be in the podcast notes as well. So, all right. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me, Holly. You are a delight. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks.
Thanks.